Dr. Zara Velthani pressed her long fingers against the cold metal surface of the laboratory table. Her pointed ears twitched as she heard the familiar hum of the gene sequencer working in the background. The machine had been running for 3 days straight, analyzing samples from across the galaxy. The research station floated in space above a massive gas giant. Through the large windows, she could see swirling clouds of purple and orange gases spinning in endless storms. The sight usually calmed her, but today, her mind was focused entirely on the work before her. Zara had spent the last 5 years collecting genetic material from every known intelligent species in the galaxy. Her goal was simple, yet ambitious: to find the common threads that connected all thinking beings. The Galactic Council had approved her research, hoping it would help them understand how different species could work together better. Her research partner, Dr. Kira Thomases, walked into the lab carrying 2 cups of hot tea. Kira's crystal-like skin caught the light from the overhead panels, creating small rainbows on the walls around her. The Zentarian scientist had been working with Zara since the project began. "Any new results today?" Kira asked, setting 1 cup near Zara's workstation. Zara picked up the warm cup and took a small sip before answering. "The sequencer finished analyzing the human sample about an hour ago. I was just about to review the data." The human sample had come from Earth 3 years earlier, during first contact protocols. A small team of diplomats had visited the planet and collected basic biological information from volunteers. Most scientists considered humans to be a relatively primitive species. Interesting but not particularly remarkable. Zara pulled up the analysis results on her computer screen. At first, everything looked normal. The human genetic code followed the same basic patterns as most other species. But as she dug deeper into the data, something unusual caught her attention. "Kira, come look at this," Zara said, her voice filled with excitement. Kira moved closer to the screen, her crystalline features reflecting the blue glow of the monitor. "What am I looking at?" Zara pointed to a series of genetic sequences, highlighted in red on the display. "These are dormant genetics markers. They appear to be completely inactive in the current human population, but look at their structure." She opened another window showing genetic data from dozens of other species. "Now compare them to the adaptation genes found in other intelligent life forms." Kira's eyes widened as she studied the information. "These human sequences are like master keys. If they were activated, they could potentially interface with the genetic systems of almost any species we know." "Exactly," Zara said, her excitement growing. "But that's not even the most remarkable part." She pulled up another set of data, showing detailed protein analysis and cellular structures. Human DNA contains adaptation mechanisms that are far more advanced than anything we've seen before. Their genetic code appears to be designed for extreme versatility. Kira sat down in a nearby chair, trying to process what she was seeing. "Are you saying that humans have the genetic potential to adapt to almost any environment or biological challenge?" "More than that," Zara replied. "Their genetic structure suggests they could serve as a bridge between different species. If we could understand how to safely activate these dormant sequences, it might solve some of the biggest biological challenges facing the galaxy." The implications were staggering. Many species throughout the galaxy were facing serious problems with reproduction and genetic diversity. Some civilizations were slowly dying out because their genetic pools had become too limited. Others struggled with diseases that their immune systems could no longer handle. But humans, according to this data, possessed genetic flexibility that could potentially help all of them. "We need to run more tests," Kira said carefully, "and we need to be very quiet about this research until we understand it better." Zara nodded, already thinking about the next steps. "I'll need to request more human samples from the council, and we should probably bring in specialists from other fields." What neither of them noticed was Dr. Vex Meridian standing just outside the lab door. The ambitious Quilarian scientist had been hoping to join their research team for months, but Zara had rejected his applications. His scaled skin flushed with anger as he listened to their conversation. Vex had always believed that his own species was superior to all others. The idea that primitive humans might hold the key to galactic biological advancement was insulting to him, but he also recognized an opportunity when he heard one. Quietly, he activated a small recording device and captured several minutes of Zara and Kira's discussion. Then he slipped away from the door before they could discover him. Over the next few days, Zara and Kira worked frantically to verify their initial findings. Every new test confirmed what they had discovered. Human genetic material contained incredible potential that seemed almost too good to be true. "I keep thinking we must be missing something," Kira said during one of their late-night research sessions. "Evolution doesn't usually create such perfect solutions." Zara looked up from her microscope. "Maybe that's because we're thinking about this wrong. What if humans didn't evolve this way by accident? What do you mean Earth is an incredibly diverse and challenging planet? The humans we met told us stories about ice ages, volcanic eruptions, massive climate changes, and countless other environmental disasters throughout their history. Maybe their genetic flexibility developed because their world demanded it." Kira considered this idea. So their planet essentially forced them to become the most adaptable species in the galaxy, exactly. And now that adaptability could benefit everyone. Unfortunately, their careful research was about to be interrupted. Dr. Vex Meridian had been busy during those same few days. He had edited the recording he made, removing any mention of the potential benefits to other species. Instead, he created a presentation that made it sound like Zara was planning to use human genetics to create biological weapons. Vex sent his edited recording directly to Chancellor Reef Corvell, the head of the Galactic Council. He also included a formal complaint accusing Zara of conducting illegal genetic research on a primitive species without proper authorization. The response came faster than anyone expected. Within hours of Vex's report reaching the council, armed security ships began moving toward the research station. Zara was in her quarters, trying to get some sleep after another long day in the lab, when alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red in the corridors as the station's security chief announced over the communication system that they were being boarded by council forces. She quickly dressed and ran toward the lab, hoping to secure her research data before the security teams could confiscate it. But as she rounded the corner, she saw council soldiers already entering the laboratory. Dr. Velthani called the squad leader, a tall being in full military armor. "You are under arrest for unauthorized genetic experimentation and potential development of biological weapons." Zara's heart sank as she realized that someone had betrayed her research. Everything she had worked for was about to be destroyed, and worse, the knowledge that could help so many species throughout the galaxy would be lost. The council soldiers moved through the research station like a swarm of metal insects. Their heavy boots echoed through the corridors as they searched every room and detained every scientist they found. Dr. Zara Velthani watched from a storage closet as her life's work was being dismantled, piece by piece. She had managed to escape the initial arrest by slipping through a maintenance tunnel that Kira had shown her weeks earlier. The crystalline scientist had been caught, but not before she managed to whisper a warning to Zara about the soldiers coming from her hiding spot. Zara could see the squad leader directing his troops to confiscate all research materials. Her heart broke as she watched them loading her gene sequencers and data storage units onto transport vehicles. Years of careful research were disappearing before her eyes. Commander Luna Hayes, the station's security chief, appeared in the corridor. The human woman had been assigned to the research station as part of the cultural exchange program between Earth and the Galactic Council. She walked with confidence, her short brown hair neat, despite the chaos around her. "Squad leader Vortex," Luna called out to the armored figure. I need to see your authorization papers for this operation. The squad leader turned toward her, his helmet hiding any expression. This is a council security matter, Commander Hayes. Your clearance level is not sufficient for the details. Luna crossed her arms and stood her ground. This is my station, and I'm responsible for the safety of everyone here. I have the right to review any arrest warrants or search authorizations. While they argued, Zara noticed Dr. Kira being led past her hiding spot in restraints. The Zentarian scientist managed to catch Zara's eye for just a moment and nodded toward the emergency exit at the end of the corridor. She was telling Zara to run. The elf scientist understood the message. She carefully opened the storage closet door and began moving quietly toward the exit. Her heart pounded as she passed within feet of the soldiers, but their attention was focused on collecting equipment and data. Meanwhile, billions of miles away on Earth, Katie Sullivan was having a perfectly ordinary morning. She woke up before sunrise, just like she had every day for the past 5 years, since taking over the family goat farm. The young woman pulled on her work boots and headed outside to check on the animals. The Montana sky was clear and filled with stars that were just beginning to fade as dawn approached. Katie loved this time of day, when the world was quiet, except for the gentle sounds of her goats moving around in their pen. She counted them carefully, making sure all 43 animals were healthy and accounted for. Her grandfather Bill sat on the front porch with his morning coffee, just like he did every day. The old man had served in the military for 30 years before retiring to help run the farm. He claimed the peaceful life was exactly what he needed after decades of excitement. "Morning, Katie," he called out as she finished checking the goats. "Coffee's ready when you are." Katie waved back and headed toward the house. She had no idea that high above her, invisible ships were moving through Earth's solar system. The crews of those ships were carrying orders to locate and capture human subjects for what the council called protective research. Back at the research station, Zara had made it to the emergency exit. She found herself in a small hangar bay where maintenance ships were stored. Most of the vehicles were locked down, but she remembered that Kira had mentioned keeping a personal scout ship in Bay 7 for quick trips to nearby asteroids. The ship was small and fast, designed for exploration rather than long-distance travel. Zara had basic pilot training from her years working on research stations, but she had never attempted to steal a spacecraft before. As she powered up the ship's systems, alarms began blaring throughout the hangar. The council soldiers had discovered her escape and were mobilizing to stop her. She could hear their heavy footsteps running toward the hangar entrance. The scout ship's engines came online, just as the first soldiers burst through the doors. Zara pushed the throttle forward and shot out of the hangar into open space. Behind her, she could see larger council ships beginning to pursue her. On the bridge of the flagship, Chancellor Reef Corval studied the reports coming in from the research station. The massive being stood over 8 feet tall, with thick gray skin and cold yellow eyes. He had ruled the Galactic Council for over 50 years, and he understood the importance of maintaining order throughout the galaxy. "Sir," his aide reported, "Dr. Velthani has escaped in a small scout ship. Our pursuit vessels are tracking her, but she appears to be heading toward the Outer Rim territories." The Chancellor considered this information carefully. What about the human genetic samples she was studying? All physical samples have been secured, but our technical teams believe she managed to download significant amounts of research data before escaping. This news troubled the Chancellor greatly. The report from Dr. Vex Meridian had painted a frightening picture of possible biological weapons being developed using human genetic material. If that research fell into the wrong hands, it could destabilize the entire galaxy. "Issue new orders to all Council forces," he commanded. "Dr. Velthani is to be captured alive, along with any research materials she carries, and send a special operations team to Earth immediately." His aide looked confused. "To Earth, sir, if Dr. Velthani's research is accurate. then humans themselves represent a potential threat to galactic security. We need to gather more of them for protective custody before other species discover their genetic capabilities. The aide nodded and began transmitting the new orders. Within hours, the fastest ships in the Council fleet were heading toward Earth's solar system. Back on Earth, Katie was enjoying a quiet breakfast with her grandfather when she noticed something unusual in the sky. A bright light was moving across the horizon, much faster than any airplane she had ever seen. "Grandpa Bill," she said, pointing toward the window. "What do you think that is?" Bill looked up from his newspaper and followed her gaze. His old military instincts kicked in immediately. The object was moving too fast and too high to be any known aircraft, and it seemed to be changing direction in ways that defied normal physics. "Probably just military exercises," he said calmly, but his hand instinctively reached for the binoculars. He kept on the windowsill. Through the lenses, he could see that the object was definitely not any kind of human technology. "Katie," he said quietly, "I think we should keep the goats closer to the barn for the next few days." Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Zara's stolen scout ship was running low on fuel. She had been flying for 6 hours, jumping from system to system to avoid her pursuers. Her destination was a small trading post on the edge of Council territory, where she hoped to find help. But as she approached the station, she discovered that Council ships had arrived there first. They were already questioning the traders and searching every vessel that tried to dock. With her fuel almost gone and nowhere else to run, Zara made a desperate decision. She programmed the ship's navigation computer with coordinates she had memorized years ago during a routine survey mission. Earth was far from any major space routes, and the Council forces might not think to look for her there, as her ship jumped into hyperspace for what might be the last time. Zara hoped that the primitive humans would be willing to help a stranger in need. She had no way of knowing that her arrival would change not only her own life, but the future of every living being in the galaxy. The chase was just beginning, and the stakes were higher than anyone could imagine. The scout ship screamed through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. Zara fought with the controls as the small vessel shook violently around her. The fuel cells were completely empty now, and she was flying on emergency power alone. Below her, she could see mountains covered in snow and forests that stretched for miles in every direction. The ship's warning systems blared as the ground rushed up to meet her. Zara managed to level out just enough to avoid a direct crash, but the impact still threw her violently against her safety restraints. Metal screamed against rock as the ship carved a long furrow through a mountain meadow before finally coming to rest against a cluster of pine trees. Steam rose from the damaged engines as Zara slowly pulled herself out of the pilot's seat. Her left arm hurt badly, and she could feel blood running down her face from a cut on her forehead. But she was alive, and more importantly, she still had her research data safely stored in a portable device tucked inside her jacket. Katie Sullivan was checking on her goats in the upper pasture when she heard the crash. The sound echoed off the mountain walls like thunder, followed by a strange whistling noise that gradually faded to silence. She grabbed her grandfather's old binoculars and scanned the ridge line. Above their property, smoke was rising from somewhere beyond the tree line, about 2 miles up the mountain from their farm. Katie had lived in these mountains her entire life, and she knew that no roads led to that area. Whatever had crashed up there, it wasn't a car or truck. She ran back to the house where her grandfather was working on his old pickup truck in the garage. "Grandpa Bill," she called out breathlessly. "Something crashed up on Miller's Ridge. There's smoke coming from the trees." Bill dropped his wrench and looked up at her with concern. "Aircraft, I don't know. It didn't sound like any plane I've ever heard, and the smoke is the wrong color." The old man wiped his hands on a rag and walked outside to look for himself. Through his binoculars, he could see the thin column of smoke rising from the forest. His military experience told him that whatever had crashed was probably too far from any road for emergency vehicles to reach quickly. Get the first aid kit from the house, he told Katie, and grab some water bottles. We're going up there. They loaded supplies into Bill's four-wheel drive truck and began the slow journey up the mountain on old logging roads. The truck bounced and lurched over rocks and fallen branches as they climbed higher into the forest. It took them almost an hour to get as close as they could by vehicle. From there, they had to hike through thick trees and brush to reach the crash site. Katie led the way, following the trail of broken branches and disturbed earth left by the falling ship. When they finally found the wreckage, both of them stopped and stared in amazement. The object was clearly not from Earth. Its smooth metal hull was unlike anything either of them had ever seen, and strange symbols were carved along its sides. "Well," Bill said quietly, "I guess those weren't military exercises after all." They approached the ship carefully, looking for any signs of survivors. Katie was the first to spot movement near the front of the vessel. A tall, slender figure was sitting against a tree, holding what appeared to be an injured arm. As they got closer, Katie realized that the survivor was unlike any person she had ever seen. The woman had long, pointed ears and skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the dappled sunlight. Her clothing was made from materials that looked both elegant and practical. "Hello," Katie called out gently. "Are you hurt?" Zara looked up at the approaching humans with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. She had studied human biology extensively, but she had never actually met one in person. These two looked exactly like the specimens in her research, but somehow more real and immediate than she had expected. "I am injured," she replied in careful English. "My ship has crashed, and I believe my arm may be broken." Katie knelt down beside the alien woman and began examining her injuries with the same gentle care she used when treating sick goats. The cut on Zara's forehead was bleeding but not deep, and her arm was definitely broken just below the elbow. "Grandpa, can you help me make a sling for her arm?" Katie asked. Bill had been standing guard, scanning the forest for any signs of pursuit. His military instincts were telling him that if this woman had crashed here, others might be looking for her, but he could see that she was in pain and needed help. Together, they fashioned a makeshift sling from a spare shirt and helped Zara to her feet. The elf scientist was amazed by how naturally the humans took charge of the situation. They didn't seem afraid of her strange appearance, and they were focused entirely on helping rather than asking questions. "Can you walk?" Katie asked. "Our truck is about half a mile down the mountain." Zara nodded, though every step sent waves of pain through her injured arm. As they made their way slowly through the forest, she found herself studying her rescuers with the same scientific curiosity they were showing toward her. The young woman called Katie moved with quiet confidence through the rough terrain. She seemed completely at home in the wilderness, and she kept checking on Zara's condition without being asked. The older man called Bill was clearly watching for danger, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. When they reached the truck, Bill helped Zara into the passenger seat while Katie gathered up the scattered supplies from their first aid mission. "Where are we taking her?" Katie asked her grandfather. "Home for now," Bill replied. "We need to get that arm properly, and then we need to figure out what's going on." During the drive down the mountain, Zara made a decision that would change everything. These humans had helped her without hesitation, even though she was clearly not from their world. She needed allies, and these people had already proven their kindness. "I must tell you something important," she said as they pulled into the farmyard. "My name is Dr. Zara Valthani, and I am a scientist from another world. I am being hunted by the government of my galaxy because of research I have been conducting." Katie turned around in her seat to look at the alien woman. "What kind of research?" "Research about humans," Zara replied. "About your genetic potential and what it could mean for all the species in the galaxy." Bill parked the truck and turned off the engine. In the sudden silence, they could hear the gentle bleating of goats in the nearby pen. "And this research," he said carefully, "is it the reason someone might be looking for you?" "Yes, and I believe they will also be looking for humans to capture and study." Your people may be in great danger because of what I have discovered. Katie felt a chill run down her spine. What did you discover? Zara reached into her jacket with her good arm and pulled out a small device no bigger than a smartphone. I discovered that human genetic material contains the key to solving problems that have plagued the galaxy for centuries. But the Council wants to exploit this knowledge rather than share it freely. She looked directly at Katie. Your DNA, and the DNA of every human on Earth, represents hope for countless dying civilizations. But it also makes your species incredibly valuable to those who would use you as breeding stock or experimental subjects. The three of them sat in the truck for a long moment, absorbing the implications of what Zara had just revealed. Finally, Bill spoke up. Well then, he said with the calm voice of a man who had faced danger many times before, I guess we'd better get you inside and figure out how to keep everyone safe. As they helped Zara out of the truck and toward the house, none of them noticed the small metallic objects that had been following their vehicle from high above the clouds. Captain Nova Sterling was already tracking them, and she was preparing to make contact within the next 24 hours. Dr. Kira Thomas's materialized in the Sullivan farmyard just after sunset, her crystalline form shimmering as the transport beam faded around her. Katie was feeding the goats when the bright light appeared, and she nearly dropped her bucket of grain in surprise. Zara, Kira called out as she ran toward the house. Thank the stars, you are safe. Inside the farmhouse, Zara was sitting at the kitchen table with her arm properly splinted and bandaged. Bill had used his old military medic training to set the bone correctly, and Katie had been bringing her cups of hot tea throughout the afternoon. When Kira burst through the front door, Zara stood up so quickly that she nearly knocked over her chair. The two scientists embraced carefully, mindful of Zara's injured arm. How did you escape from the Council forces? Zara asked. Luna Hayes helped me, Kira replied. She created a distraction during prisoner transport, and I was able to slip away. She told me to find you and warn you that more ships are coming. Bill looked up from the weapon he had been cleaning at the kitchen counter. How many more ships? Kira's crystalline features reflected the lamplight as she turned toward him. Commander Hayes intercepted communications indicating that a full invasion fleet is being assembled. The Council believes that Earth contains biological weapons that threaten galactic security. Katie sat down heavily in her chair. But that's not true, right? The research Zara was doing was meant to help people. Yes, Zara said, but someone has twisted my findings to make it seem like I was developing weapons instead of medical treatments. Over the next hour, Zara and Kira explained their research in detail to Katie and Bill. They showed them genetic data on Zara's portable device, comparing human DNA to samples from dozens of other species throughout the galaxy. Your genetic structure is remarkable, Kira told Katie. Most species in the galaxy have become highly specialized over millions of years of evolution, but humans have maintained incredible flexibility. Bill studied the data with the same careful attention he had once given to military intelligence reports. So you're saying that human genetics could help other species survive diseases and environmental challenges? More than that, Zara replied. Human genetic material could serve as a template for developing treatments that would work across multiple species. It could end a fertility crisis that is slowly killing off entire civilizations. Katie felt overwhelmed by the implications. And the Council wants to use humans as some kind of genetic resource that appears to be their plan, Kira said sadly. They would rather enslave your species than acknowledge that cooperation might be a better approach. Their discussion was interrupted by a soft knocking at the front door. Bill immediately reached for his rifle, but the visitor called out in a clear voice, Dr. Valthani, my name is Captain Nova Sterling. I need to speak with you about the Council forces that are tracking you. Bill looked through the window and saw a woman in what appeared to be military uniform, but her clothing was clearly not from Earth. She stood alone in the yard with her hands visible and empty. She's one of them, Kira whispered urgently. Maybe, Bill replied, but she's not acting like someone who wants to capture us. He opened the door carefully, keeping his rifle ready, but not pointing it directly at the visitor. Captain Sterling was tall and athletic, with features that seemed somehow familiar yet foreign at the same time. "I'm here alone," she said, looking directly at Bill. "And I'm not here to arrest anyone. I need to warn you about what's coming." Katie studied the woman's face and realized what seemed familiar about her. "You're part human, aren't you, Nova?" Nodded. "My mother was human. My father was from a species called the Altarians. I've been working for the Council my entire adult life. But what I've learned about their plans for Earth has made me question everything I believed." Bill lowered his rifle slightly. "What kind of plans? They're not just coming to capture Dr. Valthani and her research. They're planning to establish permanent facilities on Earth for genetic harvesting. They want to turn your entire species into a controlled breeding population." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, Zara spoke up. "Why? Are you telling us this?" Nova's expression grew grim. "Because I've seen what the Council does to species they consider useful but inferior. My mother's people were subjected to similar treatment before they were absorbed into the galactic community. I won't let that happen to Earth." Over the next several hours, Nova shared intelligence about Council fleet movements and invasion plans. The forces heading toward Earth were massive, far beyond anything that human military technology could resist. However, Nova continued, there may be another way to stop this. She explained that there were resistance movements throughout the galaxy, groups of people from various species who opposed the Council's authoritarian methods. Many of them had been waiting for an opportunity to challenge the Council's power. If we could somehow broadcast Dr. Valthani's real research findings to the entire galaxy, Nova said, it might spark a revolution in how people think about genetic cooperation. Katie had been listening quietly, but now she spoke up. What would that mean for the research subjects, you mean? What would it mean for humans? Zara clarified gently. Yes. If everyone in the galaxy knows about our genetic potential, won't that just make more people want to capture us? Nova considered this carefully. It's possible, but it's also possible that widespread knowledge would make it harder for the Council to maintain their monopoly on the information. Other species might demand the right to cooperate with humans, rather than exploit them. Bill had been studying the tactical situation while they talked. How long do we have before the invasion? Fleet arrives 3 days, maybe 4, Nova replied. And how long would it take to broadcast this research to the entire galaxy if we could reach one of the major communication relay stations? Kira said, we could transmit the data to every inhabited system within hours. Katie stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful valley where she had spent her entire life. Her goats were settled for the night, and stars were beginning to appear in the clear mountain sky. I want to help, she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Katie, Bill said gently, this is incredibly dangerous. I know, but if there's a chance that sharing this information could prevent a war and help people throughout the galaxy, then we have to try. Zara studied the young human woman with new respect. The research would require genetic samples from you. Fresh samples, analyzed in detail. It would not be comfortable. Katie nodded. I understand. Nova looked around the room at this unlikely group of allies. There's something else you should know. We're not the only ones who have been preparing for this day. She activated a communication device on her wrist and spoke quietly into it. Within minutes, 2 more figures appeared in the farmyard. Dr. Helen Wright, a former NASA scientist, arrived with Jake Morrison, a retired Special Forces operative. We've been monitoring alien activity on Earth for over a decade, Helen explained as she entered the house. When we detected the crash yesterday, we knew something big was happening. Jake nodded toward Bill. We've been building a network of people who could respond to exactly this kind of situation. As the night wore on, the expanded group worked to develop a plan. they would need to reach a communication relay station, upload Zara's research, and broadcast it before the Council fleet could stop them. But first, they needed to complete the genetic analysis of Katie's DNA to prove that human genetic potential could be shared safely and beneficially with other species. Katie volunteered to undergo the testing, knowing that her willingness to help might determine the future of every human being on Earth and the fate of countless alien civilizations throughout the galaxy. As dawn approached, she realized that her quiet life, herding goats, was about to change forever, but she also understood that some changes were worth making. The genetic testing took place in Bill's old barn, which had been hastily converted into a makeshift laboratory. Dr. Helen Wright had brought portable analysis equipment from her hidden research facility, while Kira used her scientific expertise to process Katie's DNA samples in real time. Katie sat patiently on a hay bale, while Zara drew blood samples and collected tissue specimens. The young woman remained calm, despite the strange devices beeping and humming around her. "The preliminary results are even more remarkable than I expected," Zara announced after several hours of analysis. "Katie's genetic markers show an enhanced version of the adaptive sequences we discovered in the original human samples." Jake Morrison was monitoring communications from his position near the barn entrance. "We're running out of time," he reported. "Council advanced scouts have entered Earth's solar system." Nova Sterling studied the tactical display on her portable computer. "The main fleet will arrive within 18 hours. We need to move now, if we're going to reach the relay station." The plan was ambitious and dangerous. The group would split into two teams. Jake, Helen, and Bill would create a distraction to draw Council forces away from the main communication relay, located in orbit above Earth. Meanwhile, Nova, Zara, Kira, and Katie would infiltrate the relay station and broadcast the research data. But as they prepared to leave the farm, Katie made an unexpected announcement. "I have a different idea," she said quietly. Everyone stopped what they were doing and turned to listen. "Instead of just broadcasting the research data, what if we also broadcast the treatment formula itself?" Zara looked confused. "What treatment formula?" "The one you're going to develop using my genetic material," Katie replied. "If we're going to change how the galaxy thinks about cooperation, we should give them something concrete to cooperate with." Kira's crystalline features lit up with excitement. "She's right. We could create a genetic therapy template based on Katie's enhanced markers and distribute it freely to every species in the galaxy. But that would take days of development work," Helen pointed out. Katie smiled. "No, it wouldn't. Not if we do it the way I'm thinking." She explained her plan to the astonished group. Instead of trying to develop a complex treatment in a laboratory, they would create a simple genetic map that any species could adapt to their own biological needs. The key was not to provide a single solution, but to give everyone the tools to develop their own solutions. "It's like giving someone a recipe instead of a prepared meal," Katie said. "Each species can modify the basic template to work with their own biology." Nova stared at the young human woman with amazement. "That's brilliant, and it would make it impossible for the Council to monopolize the technology." Within hours, they had created what Kira called the most important scientific document in galactic history. The genetic template was elegant in its simplicity, yet powerful enough to revolutionize medicine for hundreds of species. As the Council invasion fleet approached Earth, Nova and her team successfully infiltrated the orbital relay station. But instead of fighting their way in, they discovered something unexpected. The station's crew, made up of beings from a dozen different species, were already in open rebellion against the Council. Word of the genetic research had leaked out through various intelligence networks, and many aliens were refusing to participate in what they now understood was essentially slavery. "We've been waiting for someone to give us a reason to act," the station commander told Nova. "Your research data provides that reason." The broadcast went out simultaneously on every communication channel in the galaxy. Zara's research findings, Katie's genetic template, and a detailed explanation of the cooperative approach were transmitted to billions of recipients within minutes. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Species after species announced their intention to work with humans as equals rather than subjects. Medical facilities throughout the galaxy began requesting permission to establish peaceful research partnerships with Earth. But perhaps most importantly, the Council's own member species began demanding an end to the planned invasion. Chancellor Reef Corvell found himself facing a galaxy-wide revolution led by his own constituents. Within a week, the invasion fleet had been recalled, and the Chancellor had been removed from power. A new Galactic Council was formed, based on principles of cooperation and mutual respect, rather than domination and exploitation. 3 months later, Katie Sullivan was back on her family farm, herding goats just like she had before. Her life changed. Forever. But now the mountain valley was filled with activity that would have seemed impossible just a few months earlier. Zara had established a small research station in the renovated barn, where she continued her genetic studies in partnership with scientists from dozens of worlds. Her work focused on developing treatments that could help species throughout the galaxy, but always with full consent and cooperation from all participants. Kira had founded the Interspecies Research Institute in the nearby town, bringing together the brightest minds from across the galaxy to work on cooperative projects. The Institute's first major success was a treatment for the genetic fertility crisis that had been threatening several alien civilizations. Nova Sterling had become the head of a new peacekeeping organization dedicated to protecting the rights of all species. Her mixed heritage made her the perfect ambassador between humans and aliens, and her military experience helped maintain order during the transition to the new galactic government. Jake Morrison and Helen Wright worked with the Reformed Council to establish ethical guidelines for all future genetic research. Their protocols ensured that no species would ever again be subjected to exploitation in the name of scientific advancement. Bill Sullivan continued to tend his farm and watch over his granddaughter, but he also served as an informal advisor to the growing community of humans and aliens who had made the valley their home. And Katie continued to herd her goats, though now she often had alien visitors who were fascinated by Earth's pastoral lifestyle. She enjoyed teaching young beings from other worlds how to milk goats and tend gardens, sharing the simple wisdom she had learned from a lifetime of caring for animals and growing things. On quiet evenings, she would sit on the front porch with her grandfather and watch ships from dozens of worlds arrive and depart peacefully. The stars no longer seemed distant and cold, but rather like stepping stones connecting her to friends and colleagues throughout the galaxy. "Do you ever regret it?" Bill asked her one evening as they watched a beautiful crystalline ship landing in the field below their house. Katie considered the question carefully. Regret helping to prevent a war and save countless lives? Regret giving up your quiet life? She looked out at her goats, peacefully grazing in the meadow, while alien children played nearby under the watchful eyes of their parents from 6 different worlds. "Grandpa," she said with a smile, "I'm still herding goats on Earth. The only difference is that now I'm herding them in a galaxy where everyone has a chance to live free and healthy lives." As if to punctuate her words, one of her young goats bleated loudly, causing a group of visiting alien children to giggle with delight. Katie got up to check on the animals, just like she had every evening for years. Some things never changed, and that was exactly how she liked it. The galaxy might have been transformed by her DNA, but Katie Sullivan remained grounded in the simple truth that caring for others, whether they were goats or people or aliens from distant stars, was always the most important work anyone could do. Her small act of kindness toward a crashed alien scientist had rippled outward to create a new age of galactic cooperation. But at its heart, it was still just about helping those in need, one individual at a time.